into the story here about RFK Jr. Now, when RFK Jr. first announced his presidential race, I said from day one, he should not run in the Democratic Party. He should be running as an independent or third party. Since then, RFK Jr. has started to see some of the way that the DNC or the Democratic Party in general will change the rules on you just because they feel like it. They don't necessarily have to have a reason. So one of the things we discussed over a week ago was that they did already start to change the rules in reference to New Hampshire and Iowa and potentially Georgia as well, where they're making it so that if RFK Jr. or Marianne Williamson actually want to get delegates in New Hampshire and Iowa, they would have to get at least 80%. If they don't get at least 80%, their delegates go to Joe Biden. By the way, as you know, Joe Biden does not have to get 80%. Of course, right? So he's been speaking out a little bit more forcefully now and actually teasing the possibility of leaving the Democratic Party and running as an independent or third party. Now, I want to start with this clip from his campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich, complaining about some of the things they've been dealing with the DNC, particularly one issue in particular, which is Secret Service protection. So RFK Jr. has already been threatened, apparently. And as a presidential candidate, you do have the opportunity to have Secret Service, and the Biden administration is not willing to give that to RFK Jr. Let's get started with this clip here from Case Study QB with Dennis Kucinich.
With that, we bring in RFK Jr.'s campaign manager, former Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich. Great to have you with us, Dennis. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Martha.
I want to pick up on the tail end of Mike's reporting there, because it raises this question. Given the Kennedy family history, given the request for protection, now given this threat by this person pretending to be a U.S. Marshal, do you believe that the Biden administration is not acting on this out of a political drive?
Well, I don't think there's any question that this is a political decision. President Biden has it within his power to direct the Secret Service to protect Mr. Kennedy. He has chosen so far not to do that. We have appealed to him. I sent a letter this morning, once again, asking him in the name of fairness, in the name of not just protecting Mr. Kennedy, but protecting everyone around him, protecting the political process itself.
Let's stop here already. Now, Dennis Kucinich, having been a previous member of Congress, Dennis Kucinich knows a strongly worded letter isn't going to do anything. Like, you guys got to know, he knows this isn't going to. I wrote a letter. They are doing this because they don't want RFK Jr. there at all. They don't want any of these people around. They don't want RFK Jr. They don't want Marianne Williamson. They don't want Cornel West. They don't want Claudia and Karina. They don't want any of these people running, period. So they're going to find a way to make it as difficult for them as they can. Thank you, Liz, SS Secret Service. Thank you so much. Okay, I know what you're talking about now. That's why they're doing this. But what kills me, I think what really drives me crazy, is that Dennis Kucinich already knows how the Democratic Party operates. He knows how the DNC operates. He knows what they did to him. They redrew his district so that he would not have one. Because before we start hearing about Bernie Sanders, Dennis Kucinich used to be the progressive voice in the House, and they had to get him out. Even Bill Clinton didn't want Dennis Kucinich there. Let's continue.
And the fact that we have not yet received a positive response, given the escalating danger of the security environment, is astonishing.
So here's Miranda Devine in the New York Post. She says, what does it take for Joe Biden to grant his political rival, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secret Service protection he's been requesting? Does Kennedy have to be mortally wounded by an assassin's bullet like his father or uncle? So have you received any response from the White House on this?
Not yet. I just want to say, Miranda Devine probably is one of those journalists who has her fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the country. And I think all Americans are starting to become concerned. Why isn't Mr. Kennedy, particularly given the history that Fox just laid out, Why isn't Mr. Kennedy receiving Secret Service protection, especially in light of this recent incident? So we're continuing to appeal to the president to listen to the angels of his better nature, if you will, and to grant this very simple request, which again is not only about protecting Mr. Kennedy, it's about protecting everyone who's in that environment with him, and it is about protecting the American political process itself. We do not want to go through what this country went through when President Kennedy was assassinated. We cannot do that again. Let's just, what does it take? That's what I'm saying. What does it take for the president to respond?
Well, I guess,
first of all, this shouldn't even be this transaction here should not be something that has to be approved by the president of the United States, especially like, think about this. You're running against the sitting president in his party. So obviously there's a conflict of interest in reference to Joe Biden. So of course he can just ignore this and just brush it off. But what I'm talking about in reference to the process, this shouldn't have to go through the president at all. This should just be some type of form that you fill out. You prove that you're a candidate. Obviously they know, but you show your FEC form, all of that, your FEC filing, etc., and you get the Secret Service. Why does this have to go through the president of the United States? Joe Biden, come on. Joe Biden don't even know what's going on right now. He's not with it completely at all. And he said he wrote this letter to Joe Biden. How do we even know that letter got to Joe Biden? I don't think Joe Biden's making decisions. I really don't. But the process itself is flawed.
You know, the obvious point here is that there's appears to be an effort to pretend like he's not running, to pretend like this campaign isn't happening. And we see it, you know, in some of the media around this. We see people saying, why isn't anyone running against the president? And your candidate says, well, hello, here I am. And I have some pretty decent poll numbers that are actually better than a lot of the Republicans who make the debate stage. So maybe it's time for people to start recognizing that. But this context note appeared on X after Mr. Kennedy's tweet. It says the Secret Service does not provide protection until 120 days before the general election. That would be July 8th, 2024. So that's the precedent that they're leaning on here for this.
Well, that is not a precedent because there's a history that's replete in contradiction to that statement of people like President Obama and other candidates receiving protection far in advance of that so-called opening date. So this is really a question. The danger has presented itself. We've had an incident. A man with with guns, other weapons, impersonating a U.S. Marshal, nonetheless, trying to gain access to a secured perimeter. Look, what more do you want? And I'm saying this to President Biden. Please, Mr. President, recognize your responsibility not only to the candidates, but to the political process itself and to the nation. To make sure that we don't go through any kind of trauma as a result of anybody getting hurt.
All right.
The fact that people have to sit here and beg Joe Biden to do this is just really, really, really sad. And you know what else? The majority of Americans don't even know that people are running against Joe Biden. The majority of Americans aren't even paying attention, but they know that Joe Biden is the president. But most of them don't even realize he has primary challengers or any challengers. So the majority of Americans aren't even going to hear about the story. If more were paying attention right now, I'm pretty sure they would be pretty livid about what's happening.
Dennis Kucinich, campaign manager for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Good to have you here. I hope you'll come back soon. We can talk some more about New Hampshire and the delegate situation up there on the next round. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, see, Dennis Kucinich, like they have to go into Fox News because for the most part, the liberal networks like CNN or MSNBC, they don't really want to entertain this at all. Now, recently, there was an event. I believe this is in New Hampshire. Yes, in New Hampshire, because I see Scott Brown. In New Hampshire, where RFK Jr. is asked this question, if the Democratic Party keeps doing this to you, are you going to run? Are you going to split? Are you going to run independent or third party? Listen to what he had to say.
The whole process. But I guess my question, first of all, that's illegal. It's immoral and unethical. Are you going to run as an independent?
I go, well, at this moment,
If they jam you.
if they jam me, I'm going to look at every option.
So he said if they jam him, he's going to explore every option, right? And I think what's interesting is that he continues to say if. There is no if. They're already doing it. They're already cheating. They're already rigging the game. What else are you waiting for them to do? You know, it's just, I got to ask questions about this, man. You see this happening right in front of you. What else are you waiting for them to do? This is a very telling moment, guys.
You know, in this state, the state is the template for democracy. This is one of the, between this state and Iowa, this is the only place where you really have to do retail politics. You have to come here, you have to meet people, you have to shake hands, you have to go to the nail salons, you have to go to barber shops, you have to go to diners, you have to go to Roby's Market, you have to do all of these things that people do. All the other states in the country are content that, if they fly over 30,000 feet and carpet bomb them with advertising that costs $1 billion that they've raised from billionaires. And then they drop in occasionally for a highly staged, highly orchestrated rally. There's a screened audience, and it's a kabuki theater of democracy. It's not real democracy. Here you got to do real democracy. You got to answer tough questions, from people like Scott Brown. You got to come to this barbecue. You got to face down the old lady in the diner who reads the Financial Times every week, the economist, and he asks you the question, the follow-up question, and you got to know the answers. And this is the only state where you have to do that. Where people do not make up their minds. They've seen the politicians again and again. It's really important. This is a gateway for democracy in this state, and it's really a tragedy that the Democratic Party, which has been fighting for voting rights, one man, one vote, one person, one vote, since I was a little boy, that was the principal thing that the Democratic Party stood for. And the Democratic Party today has made a decision that's going to disenfranchise all the people of New Hampshire and all the people of Iowa because they did not vote for President Biden last time around. And
the Democratic Party has been disenfranchising people for quite some time. This isn't something that just happened this year. Because you notice he said they made this decision, now that they're going to disenfranchise voters. Let's remember in 2020 in Iowa, particularly in the case of Iowa, remember Pete Buttigieg announced that he won Iowa early and they weren't even done counting the votes for like Bernie Sanders. Then later on, they came out and said, oh, Bernie Sanders I think he actually did win Iowa. So they've been doing this for quite some time. It didn't just happen this year when they decided to switch the primary, ranking. So I cannot believe that he would be this naive, particularly with Dennis as his campaign manager, because Dennis knows exactly how the Democratic Party works. So I have to ask, what gives here?
the charter of the Democratic Party says that the party must remain neutral in political campaigns. But 6 days after President Biden announced from his basement with a press release, not in real life, the DNC officially endorsed him and said, he is our guy, we are supporting him, we don't want anybody else to run. They're violating their own rules, and I'm going to work.
Let me pause here when he says they're violating their own rules. Remember what I told you about the DNC fraud lawsuit. They don't have to follow their own charter. That was actually ruled by the judge in the DNC fraud lawsuit. They said that the DNC is a corporation. There is no such thing as a Democrat. They do not have to follow their own charter, and they do not have to give you a fair election. So, I mean, it's just, this stuff has been around. That's been around going back to Bernie 2016 campaign.
With them over the next couple of weeks and try to make and try to reinstate the commitment the party has to democracy. And I have to make a decision by October 15th. And we'll see what events occur between now and then.
Sir, I'm over here to your left.
Okay, and that's around the end of that, because then they cut off that question. Now, there have been some, I want to show this video, but this other one as well. There have been some that are saying they believe that RFK Jr. is trying to wait and see if Joe Biden is actually going to run. Because if that doesn't happen, then maybe that lane could open up more for RFK Jr., right? Wrong. Because what the Democratic Party would do is, if Joe Biden does not run, they would probably replace him with someone that is going to garner more or a higher approval rating than Joe Biden would, someone who's going to poll higher. And that person would probably be Gavin Newsom. They're going to, mark my words, if they do this, they're going to insert someone who's going to pretend to be progressive on the issues that matter to most American people, but also continue to be corporate and continue to toe the status quo and the establishment line. What do I mean by that? Gavin Newsom has already come out on record and said that he supports Medicare for all, but they tore it down in California. These are the things people got to think about. Remember, they tried to pass, and they had the votes to pass single payer in California. And they said, nope, don't bring it to the floor for a vote. Big money interest came in, and that did not happen. That's what they're going to do. They'll get someone. If Joe Biden steps down, they're going to get someone to pretend like they're going to say all the right things. They're going to say everyone should have health care in this country. Yes, I support Medicare for all. That'll cue in some of the progressives, right? But then they're also going to say the economy is not working for everyone. We need an economy that works for everyone. Wink, wink, but also shilling for the corporations. They'll send in someone that has co-opted the progressive message, and that person will water it down. And that person would probably be Gavin Newsom. He also hinted towards running independent in this interview with Forbes. This piece right here. Let me put on the captions. There we go.
I check every box.
Is there a scenario, given your passion for these issues, where you might ever consider running as an independent, Mr. Kennedy, given the support you're seeing?
Only if the Democratic National Committee just makes it simply impossible for anybody to win the primary battle.
See, you listen to the rhetoric. Only if they make it impossible for anyone to win the primary ballot. They've already made it impossible. It was made impossible the moment you and Marianne decided to run. They already made it impossible when they said no debates.
That's the only way I would. I'm a Democrat. I'm a lifelong Democrat. I want to, my preference is to stay within the Democratic Party as long as it's actually democratic.
Well,
just because you're a Democrat doesn't mean you have to run through the Democratic Party. He's a Democrat. He could have still run as an independent. No. We got to break away from this duopoly. We got to break away from this.